All right, so get this.
Yeah.
We're diving into alchemy, magic, and witchcraft.
Oh, wow.
Straight from 1889.
Okay.
Yeah. Our source is this book called Witch, Warlock, and Magician, Historical Sketches of Witchcraft in England and Scotland.
Wow, what a title.
I know, right? Talk about a time capsule. I am so ready to uncover some seriously fascinating facts and stories.
I think we will.
Yeah, and who knows, maybe we'll even, debunk a few modern myths along the way.
Yeah, I think that's a real possibility.
Okay.
You know what's really intriguing about this book is that it doesn't just recount these fantastical tales.
Right.
It really dives into the historical context of how these subjects were perceived back then.
Okay, so let's unpack this a bit.
Okay.
First up, alchemy.
Okay.
It always gets simplified to turning lead into gold, but I have a feeling it was way more complex than that.
Oh, you're absolutely right.
Okay.
Look, alchemy was a whole system of thought, almost a philosophy. They believed in this concept of a universal medicine, like a cure-all.
Wow.
Attributed to Hermes Trismegistus.
Okay.
Who is kind of this mystical figure considered the founder of alchemy.
Oh, so a cure for everything.
Yeah.
That's a pretty bold claim.
He is.
So were these alchemists just chasing fantasies, or were there actual scientific discoveries happening?
That's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Take Kabir, for example.
Okay.
He was an 8th century alchemist.
Okay.
And he's actually credited with some important discoveries in chemistry.
Like what?
Like corrosive sublimate and nitric acid.
Wow.
But he also firmly believed in transmutation.
Okay.
The idea of actually turning one metal into another.
So he was a scientist, a mystic.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes you wonder if the line between those two worlds was even that clear back then.
I don't think it was.
Is that a common thing among alchemists?
Absolutely.
Okay.
They were driven by both scientific curiosity and a belief in the hidden magical properties of the natural world. And that brings us to a captivating story from our source about a Dutch physician named Helvetius.
Okay.
He claimed to have met a mysterious stranger who possessed the legendary Philosopher's Stone.
What, the Philosopher's Stone?
Yes.
Like the one in Harry Potter?
Exactly like that.
Okay, I need to hear this story.
Well, picture this.
Okay.
Helvetius is skeptical, but intrigued.
Right.
And after much persuasion, this mysterious stranger finally gives him a tiny speck of this alleged Philosopher's Stone. And he gives him very detailed instructions.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, melt lead in a crucible, add this powder wrapped in wax.
Oh, okay.
And boom.
Okay.
He witnesses these dramatic color changes. And in the end, he swears the lead transformed into gold.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whether it's true or not, that is a wild tale.
It is a wild tale.
It really makes you think about the power of belief.
Yeah.
And how much it influences our perception of reality.
Precisely.
Wow.
Now let's cross the channel to England.
Okay.
Where we encounter Roger Bacon. This is a 13th century figure shrouded in both fact and fiction.
Ah, Friar Bacon.
Yeah.
Didn't he supposedly create a talking head made of brass?
You're thinking of the brazen head.
Oh, okay.
That's it.
Yeah, that's one story I've always been curious about.
Yeah.
Okay.
But before we get to that legendary tale,
Right.
It's important to note that the real Roger Bacon actually made significant contributions to science.
Oh.
He was a scholar ahead of his time.
Okay.
But the myths that surround him are equally fascinating.
Okay, so what's the deal with this brazen head?
As the story goes,
Okay.
and our source details this from a 16th century text, Bacon spent 7 years trying to create this brazen head, this artificial intelligence that could supposedly speak and reveal great secrets.
7 years, that's some serious dedication.
Yeah.
So did his experiment work?
Well, this is where the story takes a hilarious, albeit tragic turn.
Oh, no.
Exhausted Bacon instructs his assistants, Friar Bungee, and the, shall we say, less than competent Miles, to watch over the head and wake him the moment it speaks.
Oh, this sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It does, doesn't it?
What happened?
Well, the head actually did speak.
Oh.
It uttered the words, "Time is."
Okay.
But Miles, you guessed it, was fast asleep and missed it.
Oh, no.
This happened twice more.
Oh, my gosh.
With the head saying time was, and then time is past.
Yeah.
Before shattering into pieces.
Poor Miles, talk about a missed opportunity.
He really is.
It seems like a classic cautionary tale.
It does.
But also a reflection of that timeless desire to create something that can think and speak like us.
Exactly.
Artificial intelligence even back then.
Exactly. And that fascination continues to this day.
For sure.
Now, for someone who navigated both intellectual pursuits
Okay.
and the world of magic.
Okay.
Let's step into the court of Queen Elizabeth I
Okay.
and meet Dr. John Dee.
Dr. D.
Yeah,
I've heard his name, but what exactly made him so intriguing?
well,
He sounds like a bit of a Renaissance man.
he absolutely was.
Okay.
Dee was a respected scholar and advisor to the Queen,
Hmm.
but he was also deeply into magic and alchemy.
Okay.
Quite a contrast.
Oh, I love those historical figures who defy categorization.
Me too.
So what kind of magic did Dr. D practice?
He was fixated on communicating with angels,
Okay.
but not through prayer or meditation.
Okay.
He used a shoe stone, a crystal,
Right.
to try to receive messages from the celestial realm.
And what's even more amazing,
Yeah,
we have his diaries
I know.
packed with details about these attempts to contact angels.
Yeah.
Hold on, we have his actual diaries.
Yes.
That's incredible.
It is.
What kind of things did he write about?
Well, it's a fascinating mix.
Okay.
You'll find entries about Queen Elizabeth herself visiting Dee to see his library
Oh, wow.
and this famous shoe stone.
Can you imagine the Queen's reaction to all this?
I can't even imagine.
Yeah. So did he find a scryer?
He did.
Oh, okay.
His search led him to Edward Kelly, who became his dedicated scryer.
Kelly. I've heard that name before.
Yeah.
Wasn't he a bit of a shady character?
You could say that Kelly was known to be manipulative
Yeah.
and used his position to kind of exploit Dee,
Right.
ultimately leading to a bitter end to their partnership.
Oh, so another story for another time.
Another story for another time, for sure.
So far, we've been exploring like the more scholarly side of magic,
Right.
but our source also delves into the darker side, right?
Yes, it does.
The world of those who use magic for less than noble purposes.
Right. And one figure who really embodies this darker side
Okay.
is Simon Foreman,
Okay.
a 16th century astrologer and cunning man.
Okay, now what's a cunning man?
Well, cunning folk were these individuals who provided services like healing fortune-telling,
Okay.
even love spells. They kind of operate in this gray area between folklore and illicit practices.
Okay, Simon Foreman.
Yeah.
That name rings a bell. Wasn't he connected to a scandalous poisoning case?
You're thinking of the Countess of Essex.
Yes.
It was this whole tangled web of love,
My God.
betrayal,
Wow.
poison.
It sounds like something straight out of a Shakespearean play.
It does, doesn't it?
So did Foreman actually provide her with poison?
It's unclear,
Okay.
as he died before the poisoning plot actually happened.
Okay.
But his diaries
Right.
contain incriminating information, including details about his consultations with the Countess and the potions he supplied.
Wow. Those diaries sound like a treasure trove of information about the underbelly of Elizabethan society.
They really do.
Did he have other high-profile clients?
He did.
Well, like who?
According to our source,
Okay.
he had a whole network of wealthy and powerful individuals seeking his services, showing that the allure of magic and the occult wasn't limited to the common folk.
It really makes you wonder what drove those in positions of power
Right.
to seek out these services.
Yeah.
What did they hope to gain or control through magic?
It's a fascinating question.
It is.
Perhaps it was a combination of ambition, desperation, and a belief that magic could offer solutions where conventional means had failed.
Interesting. So after Foreman's death, did anyone else step into the spotlight of English magic?
Well, in a way,
Okay.
our source introduces us to William Lilly,
Okay.
who you could consider the last of the great English magicians.
Okay. William Lilly.
Yeah,
Didn't he publish those yearly almanacs filled with predictions?
you got it.
I'm getting some serious hustler vibes from this guy.
Yeah, he was very good at self-promotion.
Okay.
He was a savvy marketer of his astrological skills.
So he wasn't just making predictions about the weather.
No, he wasn't.
Okay.
He was forecasting wars, elections,
Wow.
even using his knowledge to help solve crimes.
Okay.
This made him incredibly popular, even attracting the attention of powerful patrons, despite facing skepticism and accusations of treason.
Accusations of treason. Wow, he must have been making some bold predictions.
He was.
Did any of them come true?
Well, he claims to have predicted the execution of King Charles I.
Okay.
He even published prophecies hinting at the king's downfall
Okay.
and made sure everyone knew he'd foreseen it all along.
Okay, that's some serious self-promotion.
Yeah, it is.
But wasn't he also ridiculed for his beliefs?
He was.
I vaguely remember him being satirized in a poem or something.
You're right.
Okay.
He was portrayed as this foolish astrologer, Sidrafel, in Hudibras,
Okay.
which is a satirical poem
Okay.
that really critiqued the astrological craze of the time.
Right.
But what's interesting is that even Lilly's critics acknowledged he was a skilled astrologer. They simply questioned the validity of astrology itself.
So it seems like he was a complex character.
He was.
Like part showman, part genuine believer?
Yeah.
It makes you wonder how much he truly believed in his own abilities.
Right.
And how much was just calculated performance.
Exactly. That line between belief and deception can be really hard to define, especially when we're looking back through the lens of history.
Absolutely. Now, I know we've been focusing on, like, individual magicians and alchemists,
Right.
but our source also explores the broader phenomenon of witchcraft,
Right.
especially in England and Scotland, right?
Yeah.
And this is where things take a darker turn, don't they?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah.
The witchcraft craze that swept through Europe during this period
Right.
was a dark chapter in history.
Yeah.
And England and Scotland weren't immune to its devastating effects.
It's chilling to think that so many innocent people were accused and persecuted based on flimsy evidence and superstitious beliefs.
It really is.
What fueled this craze?
Well, it was a complex mix of factors.
Okay.
Our source highlights how often accusations stemmed from personal vendettas, social anxieties, a need to find someone to blame for misfortune.
Right. So it was more than just superstition. It was about power dynamics and social control.
It was.
Using fear and accusation to target those who were different or vulnerable. Are there any particular cases or individuals that stand out in the book?
Oh, there are many.
Give me one.
But one of the most notorious figures in English witchcraft history is Matthew Hopkins.
Hopkins. That name is synonymous with cruelty and injustice.
It is.
Wasn't he infamous for his brutal methods?
He absolutely was.
Okay.
Hopkins made a career out of hunting witches,
Oh, wow.
using all sorts of dubious techniques to identify and torture them.
Like what? I've heard some truly horrifying stories about the things witchfinders did.
Well, one of his favorite methods was swimming the accused.
Swimming, huh?
They would be tied up and thrown into a body of water.
Okay.
If they sank, they were innocent.
Okay.
If they floated, it was considered proof they were a witch.
That's utterly barbaric.
It is.
It's a no-win situation.
Yeah.
Designed to condemn regardless of guilt or innocence.
Right.
What other horrific practices did he use?
Well, he would search for devil's marks on the bodies of the accused, claiming any unusual mole or birthmark was evidence of a pact with the devil.
It's unbelievable that people were condemned based on such arbitrary and cruel practices.
I know.
Now, our source also mentions the Pendle witches, right?
Yes.
That's one of the most famous witchcraft trials in English history.
Absolutely.
What happened there?
Well, the Pendle witch trials took place in 1612
Okay.
and involved a whole family accused of witchcraft.
A whole family?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
The accusations ranged from cursing their neighbors to meeting with the devil and feasting with spirits.
Okay.
The details of their supposed Sabbath meetings
Right.
are quite eerie,
Okay.
including claims of flying on broomsticks and performing dark rituals.
Feasting with spirits and flying on broomsticks.
Yeah.
It sounds like something straight out of a fairy tale.
It does.
But I know the reality was far more tragic.
Oh, much more tragic.
Yeah.
The accusations against the Pendle witches were based on hearsay personal grudges
Okay.
and the likely coerced testimony of a young girl. Tragically, many of them were found guilty and hanged,
Wow.
making the Pendle witch trials a stark symbol of the injustices of the witch craze.
It's a sobering reminder of how easily fear and prejudice can grip a community and lead to unimaginable cruelty.
It is.
Did anyone speak out against these injustices?
Fortunately, there were.
Okay, thank goodness for those voices of reason.
Yeah.
Who were some of these skeptics who dared to speak out?
One prominent skeptic was Reginald Scott,
Okay.
a 16th century writer
Okay.
who published a book called The Discovery of Witchcraft.
The Discovery of Witchcraft. What a bold title for that time.
It was.
What did Scott argue in his book?
Well, Scott meticulously debunked common beliefs about witches and their powers.
Okay.
He argued that many accusations were based on trickery, illusion,
Okay.
and the manipulation of gullible people.
Right.
He even exposed the methods used by cunning folk to create the illusion of supernatural abilities.
So he was essentially a 16th century mythbuster.
Yes, you could say that.
Did his book have any impact on the witch craze?
Well, it did have some influence, especially amongst more educated circles.
Right.
But sadly, it wasn't enough to stop the tide of fear and persecution entirely.
Yeah.
The witch craze continued for many years after Scott's book was published.
It's a reminder that even the most compelling arguments can struggle to overcome deeply ingrained beliefs and social anxieties.
They can.
Now, our source also delves into Scottish witchcraft, which makes me think of King James VI of Scotland,
Right.
who later became James VI of England.
Right.
He's famously obsessed with witchcraft, wasn't he?
He was.
Yeah.
King James was a staunch believer in witchcraft
Okay.
and even wrote a book on the subject
Oh,
called Demonology.
okay, demonology.
It had a significant impact on shaping beliefs about witchcraft, especially in Scotland,
Okay.
and fueled the witch craze even further.
Hmm.
He believed witches posed a real and present danger and encouraged their persecution.
So he wasn't just a believer. He was actively involved in the witch hunts. Wow. I can only imagine how terrifying that must have been for anyone accused of witchcraft.
Oh, absolutely.
What kind of stories about Scottish witchcraft stood out to you from the book?
Well, one of the most infamous cases is the North Berwick witch trials,
Okay.
which took place in 1590.
1590. All right.
Dozens of people were accused of conspiring to harm King James using sorcery.
Conspiring to harm the king. What were they accused of doing?
Well, they were accused of all sorts of fantastical acts,
Like what?
like sailing with the devil,
Okay.
raising storms to sink the king's ship,
Wow.
and using charms and potions to curse him.
It sounds like something out of a horror movie.
Because
But I imagine the evidence against them was flimsy at best,
it was.
driven more by fear and paranoia than anything else.
Exactly.
Were they convicted?
Sadly, yes.
Oh, wow.
Many of them were tortured into confessing, and some were even executed.
Wow. The North Berwick witch trials serve as a chilling example of how accusations of witchcraft could spiral out of control, fueled by the king's personal obsession and belief that he was being targeted.
Yeah, his paranoia really played a big role in that.
It's a terrifying example of how even those in power can be swayed by fear and superstition,
Absolutely.
leading to terrible injustice.
Yes, and it's a reminder that we must always be vigilant against the misuse of power and the dangers of unchecked fear and prejudice.
This has been a fascinating, albeit sobering, exploration of magic, alchemy, and witchcraft in England and Scotland.
I agree.
Before we move on to part 2 of our deep dive,
Okay.
what's been the biggest takeaway for you so far?
You know what strikes me most?
Yeah.
Is how these historical accounts reveal so much about the human condition. Our desire to understand the world, to control the uncontrollable,
Right.
and to grapple with the mysteries of life and death.
Yeah.
These desires often manifest in beliefs and practices that we might now consider superstitious
Right.
or even irrational, but they offer valuable insights into the minds and motivations of people in the past.
That's a great point. It's a reminder that history is about more than just dates and events.
Exactly.
It's about understanding the people who lived through those times, their hopes, fears, and beliefs.
Absolutely. And I think it's important for us to approach these stories with both curiosity and a healthy dose of skepticism.
Okay.
We can learn a lot from the past,
Right.
but we must also be critical of the sources and narratives
Right.
that shape our understanding.
Well said. Now, before we continue our exploration of this fascinating world, I want to leave our listeners with this.
Okay.
As you delve deeper into these accounts, think about how they challenge or confirm your own understanding of magic, alchemy, and witchcraft.
Okay.
What resonates with you?
Yeah.
What surprises you?
Right.
And what lessons can we draw from the past to better understand our present?
Good questions.
Stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive. Welcome back. Last time we left off discussing King James's obsession with witchcraft
Right.
and the chilling North Berwick witch trials.
Yeah. And while those trials highlight the dangers of unchecked power and fear,
Right.
our 1889 source actually goes even deeper,
Okay.
exploring actual confessions from those accused of witchcraft in Scotland.
Confessions. Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
What were these accused witches confessing to? Was it all flying on broomsticks and brewing up potions?
Well, it's crucial to remember that many of these confessions
Okay.
were likely coerced under immense pressure and duress,
Right.
but they do offer a glimpse into the anxieties and beliefs
Okay.
that really shaped the perception of witchcraft at the time.
Yeah.
One recurring theme
Okay.
is this idea of the witches' Sabbath,
Okay.
a secret gathering where witches allegedly met with the devil and engaged in all sorts of unholy activities.
The witches' Sabbath. Okay, I've heard whispers of this.
Yeah.
Wild stories about feasting, dancing, and even flying to these gatherings.
Right.
Was that what these confessions were describing?
Exactly. These Sabbaths were often described as nocturnal gatherings, held in remote locations like forests or graveyards,
Creepy.
and the accused confessed to flying there on broomsticks.
hold on, flying on broomsticks, that's a classic image.
It is.
But how much of this was rooted in reality?
Right.
And how was fueled by imagination or even forced upon these individuals?
That's the challenge with historical sources, isn't it?
Right.
Separating truth from fabrication can be tricky.
Yeah.
But what's intriguing is how detailed these confessions were, often outlining specific rituals and practices supposedly performed during these Sabbaths.
So what kind of rituals are we talking about here? Give me the spooky details.
According to the confessions,
Okay.
the devil would often appear in various forms.
Like what?
Sometimes as a man in black,
Okay.
other times as a goat, or even a large black dog.
A black dog.
Yeah.
That's creepy.
Yeah.
I've always heard they're bad omens.
Well, black dogs have a long history in folklore,
Yeah.
often associated with the supernatural. And the confessions go on to describe how witches would pledge allegiance to the devil,
Okay.
renounce their baptism,
Wow.
and even kiss his backside as a sign of loyalty.
Okay. That took a dark turn.
Yeah, it did.
But it shows how seriously they took this alleged pact with the devil.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't just a metaphorical allegiance. It was a real and terrifying commitment in their minds.
You're right. It speaks to their belief in a very real, very present spiritual world.
Right.
Where deals with the devil had tangible consequences.
Wow. Aside from these Sabbath gatherings, what other powers were these witches accused of possessing?
Well, they were accused of all sorts of things.
Okay, like what?
Ranging from causing illness and misfortune to manipulating the weather,
Okay.
even killing livestock.
It seems anything bad that happened could be attributed to witchcraft.
It could.
I can imagine how easily those accusations could stick, especially when people didn't understand how diseases spread or why crops failed. It's easy to see how someone different or ostracized could be blamed for things they had no control over.
Exactly. And our source gives specific examples.
Oh, okay.
One confession details how a witch supposedly used a charm to blight her neighbor's crops,
Wow.
causing them to wither and die.
So they believed witches could actually control nature.
They did.
Were there any limitations to their supposed powers?
It seems not.
Okay.
They were accused of summoning storms, causing droughts, even controlling the tides.
Wow.
Any natural phenomenon that seemed out of the ordinary could be attributed to a witch's influence.
Right, and this was a time when people were much more connected to the natural world and its rhythms.
Right.
So any disruption was deeply unsettling.
Absolutely.
Okay, so did they believe witches acted alone? Or was there talk of supernatural help?
Yes. Our source mentions familiar spirits.
Okay.
These were supernatural beings,
What?
often depicted as small animals like cats, dogs, or toads,
Okay.
that supposedly assisted witches in carrying out their evil deeds.
So like a supernatural sidekick.
You could say that.
But I imagine these familiars weren't exactly cute and cuddly.
Not quite. They were seen as extensions of the witch's evil power,
Okay.
often depicted as grotesque or demonic creatures.
Right. It's interesting how these beliefs reflect that primal fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
The idea that unseen forces are at work influencing our lives for good or evil.
Right.
It seems that fear is as old as humanity itself.
You're absolutely right.
And that fear can manifest in all sorts of ways.
Yeah.
From folklore and mythology
Right.
to our modern fascination with horror movies and the supernatural.
Exactly.
But even amidst this darkness and fear,
Yeah.
remember how we talked about those who challenged the witchcraft narrative?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, those voices of reason are so important.
They are.
Did our source mention anyone else besides Reginald Scott who spoke out against these beliefs?
Well, Scott was definitely a key figure.
Yeah.
Remember his book, The Discovery of Witchcraft?
Yeah.
He argued that many accusations were rooted in ignorance, malice, or even mental illness. He meticulously examined the evidence used against those accused of witchcraft
Okay.
and highlighted its inconsistencies
Right.
and often fabricated nature.
So he was basically a 16th century skeptic, using logic and reason to debunk these harmful superstitions.
Exactly.
Did his work make a difference?
While his work had some influence, especially among more educated audiences,
Right.
it wasn't enough to completely stop the persecutions. The witch craze continued for decades,
Yeah.
fueled by fear, religious fervor, and even political opportunism.
It's a reminder that even the most compelling arguments don't always win out against deeply ingrained beliefs and social anxieties.
Unfortunately, that's true.
What else did our source have to say about combating witchcraft?
Yeah.
Did they just rely on trials and accusations, or were there other methods?
Well, aside from the witch trials and interrogations, there were various folk practices and rituals believed to ward off evil spirits and offer protection from witchcraft. It seems people were constantly seeking ways to safeguard themselves from these unseen forces.
Like what kind of rituals did they perform?
Well, one common practice was the use of protective charms and amulets.
Okay, so they were essentially carrying around good luck charms to ward off evil.
Yeah, you could say that.
Did they have any specific beliefs about which objects were most effective?
They did. Our source mentions the use of rowan wood as being particularly potent against witches.
Rowan wood, isn't that what they make wands out of in Harry Potter?
You're exactly right.
Wow.
It seems these ancient beliefs still resonate in popular culture today.
Hmm.
Rowan wood has long been associated with protection and purification in folklore and mythology.
It's fascinating how these old traditions continue to weave their way into modern stories and beliefs.
It is.
So aside from charms and amulets, were there any other methods they used to combat witchcraft?
They also believed in the power of counterspells and rituals,
Okay.
often performed by cunning folk or wise women who were believed to possess special knowledge of the supernatural.
So it was like a spiritual arms race, fighting fire with fire. What did these counter spells entail? Did they involve any elaborate rituals?
According to our source, some counterspells involved reciting specific incantations,
Okay.
burning certain herbs, or even drawing protective circles around their homes to ward off evil spirits.
It's amazing how deeply intertwined these beliefs and practices were with their everyday lives.
Yeah.
They were constantly seeking ways to protect themselves from the unseen forces they believed were at work in the world.
That's true. And while we might view some of these practices as superstitious, it's important to remember that they provided a sense of agency and control in a world that often felt unpredictable and dangerous.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that even in times of fear and uncertainty, people find ways to cope and create a sense of security.
Right.
Even if it's through rituals and beliefs that we might not fully understand today.
Now, while it's easy to get caught up in the fascinating details and stories of witchcraft, we can't forget the real human cost of these beliefs. Real people suffered and died as a result of these accusations and persecutions.
You're absolutely right. It's easy to lose sight of the human cost when we're discussing historical events from a distance.
Yeah.
But these weren't just stories. They were real lives shattered by fear, ignorance, and injustice.
Many of those targeted were the most vulnerable members of society.
Right.
The elderly, the poor, those who were different or marginalized. They became easy scapegoats for societal anxieties and anxieties about the unknown.
It's a stark reminder that we must always be vigilant against prejudice, intolerance, and the abuse of power.
Yes.
Recognizing those patterns throughout history and working to break them.
Well, it's a lesson that's as relevant today as it was back then. What has resonated with you most from our discussion so far?
What strikes me is the enduring power of belief. Whether it's belief in magic witchcraft or even modern conspiracy theories, the human mind has a remarkable capacity to create and sustain narratives that offer a sense of meaning and order in a world that often feels chaotic and unpredictable.
That's such an important point. It makes you wonder what beliefs we hold today.
Right.
That future generations might find just as fantastical or even dangerous.
Right.
It's a reminder to always question our own assumptions and be open to different perspectives.
Absolutely. And to approach historical accounts with both curiosity and a healthy dose of skepticism.
Yes.
Always remembering the human stories behind the headlines.
Exactly. And with that thought in mind, let's move on to the final part of our deep dive, where we'll explore the legacy of these beliefs and their relevance in the modern world.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive. We've journeyed through centuries of beliefs about magic, alchemy, and witchcraft. It's been fascinating and a little unsettling at times to see how these beliefs shaped people's lives and even led to moments of real darkness.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But for this last part, I'm curious to shift gears a bit and explore how those beliefs, as fantastical as some may seem, still resonate in our modern world.
Okay, now that's intriguing.
What's their lasting impact?
I'm ready to be surprised.
Yeah.
Where do we see those threads of magic, alchemy, and even witchcraft woven into our present day?
Well, for starters, think about the enduring popularity of fantasy literature and films.
Oh, yeah.
From Harry Potter to The Lord of the Rings, we're clearly still captivated by stories of magic, sorcery, and supernatural beings.
Yeah.
Those themes tap into something deep within us,
Right.
a fascination with the unknown and the possibility of extraordinary powers.
That's so true. Who doesn't love a good magic system or a thrilling battle against dark forces?
Right.
But are you saying those modern stories are directly influenced by the historical beliefs we've been discussing?
Absolutely. Many of them draw inspiration from those very beliefs and practices.
Mm.
Reimagining them for a modern audience,
Right.
they play on our fascination with hidden worlds, ancient wisdom,
Mm.
and the idea that there might be more to reality than meets the eye.
So it's like these ancient beliefs have found new life in our modern storytelling.
Yeah.
It's not just about escapism, it's about exploring those timeless questions about the nature of reality and our place within it.
You've hit the nail on the head.
Hmm.
And those influences aren't limited to fantasy.
Okay.
Think about Gothic literature,
Okay.
which emerged in the 18th and 19th centuries with its themes of mystery, the supernatural, and the occult.
Ah, the Gothic novels. Give me creepy castles, shadowy figures, and a healthy dose of suspense any day.
Right.
But how does that connect back to the beliefs we've been exploring?
Well, Gothic novels often featured characters dabbling in alchemy,
Okay.
communicating with spirits, or seeking forbidden knowledge.
Hmm.
Those themes, the exploration of the darker side of human nature and the mysteries of the afterlife,
Right.
continue to resonate in modern horror movies and supernatural thrillers.
Yeah, it's fascinating how those primal fears and fascinations continue to find expression in our storytelling, even as our understanding of the world evolved.
Precisely. But it's not just about entertainment. Those historical beliefs have also influenced the rise of modern esoteric movements and spiritual practices.
Okay, now we're talking. What kind of movements are we talking about? Are we seeing a resurgence of magic in the modern world?
Well, think about the growing interest in astrology, tarot, and other forms of divination.
Hmm.
Practices once dismissed as mere superstitions have gained new popularity, particularly among those seeking alternative ways to understand themselves and the world around them.
You're right. It seems like everyone's checking their horoscope or getting their tarot cards read these days. It's like we're seeking guidance and meaning from ancient wisdom traditions in an increasingly complex and uncertain world.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And many of these esoteric movements draw inspiration from the Hermetic tradition, alchemical philosophy, and the mystical beliefs of the past, reinterpreted and adapted for a modern audience seeking meaning and connection.
So even though we live in a scientifically advanced age, there's still a yearning for something more, a sense that there might be hidden dimensions to reality that science can't fully explain.
That's a great observation.
Hmm.
And it's not just about personal growth and spirituality.
Okay.
The influence of these beliefs extends to some scientific fields as well,
Okay.
blurring the lines between what we consider magic and science.
Hold on, science? Really? I always thought those two were polar opposites. How could magical thinking influence modern science?
It's more nuanced than that. Consider that chemistry itself emerged from the alchemical tradition.
Hmm.
In their quest to transmute metals, alchemists developed many techniques and tools that laid the foundation for modern chemistry.
Yeah, that's true. Sometimes the pursuit of the impossible can lead to unexpected discoveries.
You can.
But are there any modern examples of that crossover between ancient wisdom and scientific exploration?
Even today, some scientists are exploring the potential of ancient wisdom traditions to inform new discoveries and innovations.
Really?
It's about recognizing that even ancient practices might hold insights that can be explored with a modern scientific lens.
That's incredible. So maybe magic and science aren't as diametrically opposed as we often think. They both stem from a desire to understand the world, to push the boundaries of knowledge, and to unravel the mysteries of the universe.
You've got it. And it's a reminder that approaching any subject, whether it's rooted in ancient tradition or cutting-edge science, requires an open mind, a healthy skepticism, and a willingness to challenge your own assumptions.
Well said. As we wrap up this incredible journey through the world of Witch, Warlock, and Magician, I'm struck by how these historical accounts, while fantastical at times, reveal so much about the enduring power of belief, the complexities of human nature, and our timeless quest to understand the universe and our place within it.
You know, we've seen how the lines between magic, alchemy, and science can blur, and how beliefs and practices once considered supernatural can evolve and find new expression in the modern world. As we move forward, it's crucial to remember the lessons of the past, both the triumphs and the tragedies, and to approach the unknown with curiosity, a critical eye, and a respect for the diverse ways in which humanity seeks meaning and understanding.
Beautifully said. And to our listeners, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep that spark of curiosity alive. Until next time.